Hello everyone, John Hurricane here from GamersHeroes.com, and today we're going to be going over just why World War Z, the video game, has gotten a Game of the Year edition despite not winning Game of the Year. Let's get started. It is a little windier today, so we're going to be starting at an angle. Hopefully my back blocks the wind should it come by, so my hair might be flopping around a little bit, but that's all right. So if you're wondering why World War Z got a Game of the Year edition, you are not alone. They did not win any Game of the Years. I did a quick little, now it's a very quick search. I spent like 5-10 minutes looking on Google. Only thing I could find really was the DLC. So I'm not saying that no one gave it Game of the Year. I'm saying no one big gave it Game of the Year. So how did this happen? Now I like to compare this to a sports team, right? I'm from Michigan. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. So let's talk about the Super Bowl, which even if you don't watch sports, you know what the Super Bowl is. You can compare it to any other sport as well. Stanley Cup, World Series, Finals, NBA Championship, boxing championships, UFC championships, everything like that. So there are, you know, if you're a champion, you're a champion. These guys are not a champion, right? So this is kind of like, I say Detroit Lions because World War Z is not that great of a game. It's sitting at like a 67 Metacritic, and that's probably right about where the Lions are. A 67, that sounds about right. They have flashes of brilliance, but they're not champion caliber, unfortunately. Never really have been, but hey. So what I'm kind of comparing it to here is like, if you can imagine, right, if in 2020, well, we don't know if football is getting back to it, but let's just say, hypothetically they get back to it, there's Super Bowl in 2020 happened already, but point being is, if the Lions were selling a jersey that said Super Bowl 2020 champions, right? That is just a straight up lie, and that is what World War Z Game of the Year edition is. It is not a Game of the Year. No one gave it Game of the Year. Why are they doing this? Well, sales, right? It's pretty obvious. You'll find that in a lot of these videos, it is oftentimes sales. Someone who hasn't picked up World War Z yet, especially considering I know I'm outside, most of us are stuck inside right now. It is a co-op zombie killing game, and those sell very well. But if you haven't picked it up yet and you see that that is Game of the Year because they apparently can just say they're Game of the Year despite not being Game of the Year, you might think, oh, that's actually a better game than I thought it would be, and you might be inclined to pick it up. And that's why they did it. There's another reason for them doing this, and I think it's because their sales expectations were really low. If I had to guess, they probably estimated 1 million sales. Hopeful 2 million. In 2019 of October, they announced that they had over 3 million in sales. So I think they're riding a little high right now, these guys. They're like, oh, we got a hit on our hands. And 3 million is nothing to scoff at. It is something that they have indeed, they've got a hit, especially for a smaller title like this. So what happens is when you get this kind of, you know, this ego boost, when you weren't expecting to do that well and you do that well, you start doing things you shouldn't do, like putting out Game of the Year editions when it's not Game of the Year. So as I kind of alluded to earlier with the mentioning of the Super Bowl champion Lions 2020, which never going to happen, that is what Game of the Year for World War Z edition is. So here's the thing, right? There's no really, there isn't. There is a unified Game of the Year. It's not like the Super Bowl, the Stanley Cup, NBA Final. There's no unified thing. There are the Game Awards, and generally that is what we look to when we think about what the actual Game of the Year is, but some of us just look to our certain publications. But even then, right, there are generally two big games that are fighting for #1 spot. World War Z is not one of those, right? You look at any sport, it's always one-on-one. One team on one team, or one player on one player, or one fighter on one fighter, whatever. But if I'm saying World War Z was not one of those two, I like to look back at, not last year, but 2018, when we had God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2. Those are very two clear-cut competitors that deserve to be at the top of the game. God of War won in most people's opinion, and I think that is the right way to do it. Last year was a little different. Sekiro got it, which, you know, I enjoyed Sekiro, but I know a lot of people didn't because it was too hard. Before that, Breath of the Wild, very obvious choices. There are generally obvious choices. Here's the thing about World War Z. It's not the top 2, it's not the top 5, it's not the top 10, hell, I don't even put it in the top 20. It shouldn't be in there. So how did it get there? I mean, as I said, it is for sales. Someone figured out that that's the thing about Game of the Year, right? Let's use Super Bowl. Super Bowl way up here, got a lot of legitimacy to it. Video games, we go pretty low. Not a lot of legitimacy to it, despite the fact that it makes billions of dollars a year, especially when you consider Game of the Year award. There's just too many critics, too many websites, too many everything claiming that this is Game of the Year. So I'm sure you can find someone somewhere who said it was Game of the Year, but no credited sites, no big things. The Game Awards didn't give it to it, but what are you gonna do? It's false advertising. If you call them out and try and make any money off suing them or whatever, they can just put up a quick little blurb somewhere and be like, these guys call me Game of the Year, and they're in the clear, which is very unfortunate. This really does kind of hurt the industry because, as I was talking about, you know, the legitimacy of the Game of the Year, it's never gonna be on the tier of like a Super Bowl or anything like that. But when you do stuff like this, it just does even worse. It just plummet things down. I looked, last year was Sekiro. That's not gonna get a Game of the Year edition because there's no DLC. God of War, no Game of the Year edition because, again, no DLC. Might become a PlayStation Hits eventually, but not a Game of the Year. Bird over there. Same with Red Dead. No DLC, so no Game of the Year edition. I know there's a lot of online stuff. Breath of the Wild, I don't believe it had Game of the Year edition. It did have a ton of DLC, but it was just a season pass. What I'm getting at is not even these Game of the Year winners do a Game of the Year edition anymore. I think back in the day, I want to say Arkham City, that one did. So certain games did, right? Certain games with a lot of DLC did, but the most recent ones don't. It's kind of classless, to be real with you, and it's super classless when you don't actually win Game of the Year. Now I don't want to just completely crap on these guys. They are supporting the game a year later, which I do totally, that's awesome. Keep supporting the game. I mean, I'm sure those 3 million sales didn't have anything to do with that, but that's where we're at with it. I did look up a few Twitter comments. Actually, Smith linked them to me to show me that there are some bugs with the current new DLC, and this launched along with the new DLC in a whole package. You can buy the DLC 15 bucks, or you can buy the game for 60 bucks with the DLC if you don't already have it. But there's matchmaking issues, there's texture issues, the games are crashing, a lot of Xbox issues from what I could see. Not as many PS4 issues, but I don't know. I had a lot of issues when I played it on PS4. There was one really cool one where a couple, I don't have the footage anymore, but it made me laugh when the zombies fell through like it's a little helicopter or a fan blade, and they just all fell in, and I accidentally walked into it. It was really fun. It was funny because the game itself was funny. There's cool mechanics in the game. As I said, flashes of brilliance. You got those zombie hordes that are really awesome. The wind's picking up right now. But outside of that, it was just a pretty generic zombie co-op shooter that now gets the title of Game of the Year because the publisher, the developer, whoever decided that they get to do it, and no one can really call them out for it except for us, and that's what's happening, calling them out. I'm trying to. It's not gonna make any difference. They've already printed the copies, already shipped the copies. It's just the unfortunate thing that if you don't know that these guys, if you're not into video games, you don't really know what the Game of the Year is, and all of a sudden, you know, you look at that and you're like, oh, cool, it won Game of the Year. You don't know where or who, but Game of the Year is the new shiny thing, right? It looks good on a box or on a downloadable thing or whatever. So it's to trick people who haven't already played the game, which I don't like, but that's business. So what are you gonna do? Anyways, I'd like to know what you guys have been playing in your quarantine and all that. I've started playing Total War Warhammer 2 with Smith. Basically, have made it nowhere because that game is very hard, but I'm enjoying it. Let me know what you're playing. Let me know what you think of all these. If you did find someone who actually gave it Game of the Year, I'd like to see that article or that YouTube video or whatever and see what's going on there. Maybe that's the one that they're using because I didn't find any. But hey, if you liked what you saw, got what you needed, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys in the next video. Later, Gators.